I feel like every single neutral not is, but definitely should be rooting for the Buffalo Bills to be in the Super Bowl. Why should we not be rooting for greatness?
He chose the Bears, right?
Over Tom Brady. He chose the Bears over Tom Brady.
Jayden Daniels, who at this point, I think might be having the best rookie quarterback season of all time.
I'm probably going to regret this, but if the Bills Mafia, if the Buffalo Bills make the Super Bowl and someone throws me through a table and it's on fire, I will do that for talkSPORT.
Well, welcome back to talkSPORT End Zone, our dedicated NFL YouTube channel, and it's our NFL Rundown show. Will Gavin, Brian T. Smith. Brian, I'm not going to lie. After what I think might have been the best divisional round, certainly since I started covering the sport kind of 15 years ago, absolutely sensational weekend. I'm feeling quite spicy. I am ready for this. I am so hyped for the last three games of the season. Championship weekend looks great. The Super Bowl is just a couple of weeks away from us heading to New Orleans. This is going to be massive.
This is the time of the year, Will. I think all the smart, not the dumb, all the smart NFL fans know that the divisional round is the round. And then you get the championship Sunday. I don't even care about the Super Bowl right now. Championship Sunday is set up to be absolutely fantastic. And no matter who wins, we're going to have an amazing Super Bowl. There is so much to get into. And this is just it. We spend the whole season waiting for these couple weekends. This is, for me, this is the best sporting theater in the world.
So coming up on the show, right, we are going to be talking about Jayden Daniels, the Washington Commanders, going on the road to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. What a game that promises to be. Adam Hoge is going to join us from CHGO. We're going to talk about Ben Johnson to the Bears, and we're going to be doing our extra point later. And I wanted to make sure I went down that rundown because it's to say that for our first conversation, we're not touching officiating or refereeing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Saying that now,
I don't know what you're talking
about. Saying that to every camera in here. We are not touching officiating or refereeing when we discuss the Buffalo Bills going to Arrowhead against the Kansas City Chiefs. When we discuss the AFC Championship game, which headlines Championship Sunday, which sees the Buffalo Bills in the Josh Allen era 4-1 against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, but 0-3 against the Chiefs in the postseason. Can they get over their playoff hoodoo? Can they finally win at Arrowhead in the playoffs? It's such a great storyline going into this weekend. And I feel like every single neutral not is, but definitely should be rooting for the Buffalo Bills to be in the Super Bowl.
This is the game of the year part 2, right? Because it wasn't that long ago on this show, on the rundown for talkSPORT, that we were the game of the year, the Bills and the Chiefs. And the Bills won that game. And Josh Allen had his MVP moment at the time. And it was the breakthrough. But what did go back. What did Patrick Mahomes say when he's walking off the field? We'll see you again. Basically, we're going to see you in the playoffs. And hint, hint, that's when it matters. And we're going to beat you in the playoffs. Read into that because there's so much to get into those few words, Will. This is it. We've been waiting the entire season for this. And if you're a Bills fan, if you're a Chiefs fan, if you're an NFL fan, we've really been waiting years for this. The NFL, all right, this is how serious this game is. The NFL had to change its overtime rules because of the Bills-Chiefs Classic just a few years ago where it was a Wild West shootout. And Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs got the ball. Josh Allen didn't get a shot. And the NFL basically had to come out and say, we've heard so much on social media and all the complaining, we have to change our overtime rules. That is this rivalry. You're talking about a Buffalo Bills team, been to the Super Bowl 4 times, never won it. A Chiefs team that is the dynasty, and they're trying to be the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls. There is so much at stake. But in the end, it comes down to 2 players, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Who will be the winner on Championship Sunday? It feels like 10% of football America, which are Kansas City fans, Swifties, want the Chiefs. 90%. Everybody else in the world wants the Buffalo Bills to win this game.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a moment then. As somebody who has grown up and loved football through some of the biggest dynasty eras, from the 49ers and Cowboys through to what we saw with the Patriots and Tom Brady, who basically had 2 separate dynasties.
Sure.
And now maybe the greatest of them all. The Kansas City Chiefs could win 3 Super Bowls back-to-back, 4 out of the last 5. They're in a 7th straight AFC Championship game.
Which is ridiculous.
Ridiculous, unprecedented stuff. Why should we not be rooting for greatness? Why should we not be saying, I want to be there when Patrick Mahomes lifts a Lombardi trophy, a 3rd in a row, something we'll be talking about still in 50 years' time if we're fortunate enough to still be on this big blue marble. Why shouldn't we be rooting that? Why shouldn't we be behind great players, great plays, great moments?
There are 2 answers to this question. Number 1, there is my personal answer, which I've been saying all season on this show. I've said over and over, and we've had different people and had different segments and different episodes, and I've said, I don't hate on the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time already. He's in the top 10 at talkSPORT for the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Andy Reid is one of the greatest coaches of all time. Bill Belichick walks away, Andy Reid takes over. Travis Kelce is one of the best tight ends of all time. They lose all these players, they add players. I don't hate on the Kansas City Chiefs. The other part of the answer is that the rest of America right now is tired of the Kansas City Chiefs. And you mentioned the Patriots. It's a Patriots, syndrome. It's kind of like the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA when they were, with Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich and they would win, and in the end, the San Antonio Spurs would be in the finals, and they're probably going to win those finals. People are just tired of the Chiefs. But the other part of that is Taylor Swift and what happened last year, to where everyone just got burned out on Chiefs 24/7. Not on your NFL blog, not on social media. If you were just following NFL accounts, on TMZ and People and Us Weekly and all that stuff out there. That's what they got tired of. They're tired of 24/7, 365 Chiefs. So it's not me, but speaking for the rest of the world, yeah, it's fair to say they are tired of everything Chiefs right now.
This feels like a summary of what we've talked about all season, right? But they do feel like they've turned into the evil empire. As much as we're not going to talk about the officiating calls.
Even though Patrick Mahomes is like a really nice family guy who's highly likable, he's got a funny voice.
Brilliant to watch, as well.
Cool,
beyond that.
Cool guy, incredible quarterback. And people still, now we won't talk about the REF S word, but they still hate him more than ever right now, Will.
And look, there's part of me that gets it. You've got Harrison Butker offending people pre-season, whether you agree with his politics or not. You've got all the sky, all of it to me feels like that we should not root against them. And yet there's that element of, if I get there and they're there, I'm going to love watching greatness.
The Chiefs have become inevitable. And we spent all season, did they deserve to be undefeated? Were they really that great? They were the luckiest team in the NFL history. All these things. These were headlines at talkSPORT, and they were accurate headlines, Will. But what did I say all season? They just kept winning. We would debate, is it over for Travis Kelce? What's wrong with Patrick Mahomes? All these things. But in the end, they were always good enough. Even against the Houston Texans. The Texans outgained the Chiefs. You want to talk stats. There are some really crazy stats, Will, from that Texans game, to where the Texans did something that had never been done before in NFL history, and they still lost that game. The Chiefs just win. They find a way to win. They have enough talent. DeAndre Hopkins isn't really doing very much for them right now, and they're still finding ways to win. And that's, people just get tired of that. They don't want to see the same team every year, and that's why it does feel like 90% of America, 99% of America is pulling for the Bills, and they want to see the Eagles or the Commanders and Jayden Daniels win the Super Bowl.
But for me, it's why you should be rooting for the Bills that I find almost more interesting. Because what you've got is, in Josh Allen, you've got a genuine superstar, a cyborg at quarterback who can do absolutely everything, who can put a team on his back, but who has a great story as well. And the NFL loves a great story.
I was going to say, Josh Allen's backstory is absolutely... I mean, grew up on I've written about this, talkSPORT. Grew up on a 3,000-acre farm in small town California. Couldn't even get a scholarship to college. Did a huddle.
Had to go to JUCO. He had to go to
Then he had to go to Wyoming.
Version of college.
You don't become the greatest quarterback in the NFL compared to Lamar Jackson by going to Wyoming. He was booed by Bills fans didn't want him. He was doubted. I've read blogs before when he was drafted. Will, people said this pick will never ever work out. And now Josh Allen is one win away from making the Super Bowl. But that's the other part I love about it. Who's he have to beat? He doesn't have to beat Lamar Jackson. He doesn't have to beat Geno Smith. He's got to beat Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes, thus far, always wins that game.
So you've got Josh Allen. You've got a great coaching staff who have developed this season brilliantly. You've got phenomenal fans. There was that wonderful moment, I don't know if you've seen, of Dion Dawkins. He's been mic'd up for the game this weekend, looking up into the fans and just saying, do you ever look at the fans? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. He's so enamored with his own fan base.
With the Bills Mafia. The Bills
Mafia in New Orleans. If they turn up and start putting each other through picnic tables, I'm going to be so here for it. I think if that happens, Brian, we should be putting you through a kitchen table.
I'll say this right now. If the I'm probably going to regret this, but if the Bills Mafia, if the Buffalo Bills make the Super Bowl and someone throws me through a table and it's on fire, I will do that for talkSPORT.
You heard it here first,
officially,
guys.
I will do it. I will do it.
It is happening. But for me, it's on the field we need to talk about, because we are talking about the storylines, the narratives, why you should want to root for them. The Chiefs, you said it, the Texans outgained them. They didn't turn the ball over through the first 3 quarters. They looked like the better of the 2 teams. And yet the Chiefs, in classic fashion, always find a way to win. Special teams was huge in this game. Travis Kelce hadn't had a 100-yard and a touchdown game all season. First one comes, first playoff game for him. Like, they are the ultimate, we will beat you and we'll find a way to beat you.
Patrick Mahomes' confidence is just absolutely unbelievable as an athlete. It reminds me of Michael Jordan. It reminds me of LeBron James at his peak. It reminds me of Joe Montana, the GOATs, the greatest of the great. They're not going to lose. Patrick Mahomes refuses to lose. How can you hate on that?
And for me, the Bills, finally with this game against the Ravens this past weekend, and later we'll talk about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, finally showed me something which they've been eking towards all season. We'd seen slowly Sean McDermott, the head coach, getting a little more aggressive, being willing to go for it on 4th downs. We saw that with Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, year 2 of him in the system, that he'd really started to fine-tune it so they didn't have to rely on Josh Allen's arm, that they could, and leg, that they could find ways to win outside of that. We saw finally against the Ravens, though, more than anything else, is for all of those positive things I want to say about the Bills, they're quite a lightweight team. That's how they're built. And they have a very specific style of playing. And they are a team who, if they come against the wrong matchup, I worry for them. I looked at this Ravens game, and I had the Ravens hands down on Sunday by the time we got to that game, because it just looked like it was a horrible matchup between the two. And finally, Sean McDermott, Bobby Babich, they put together one of the most beautiful schemed game plans I think I've ever watched. They nailed it down to, and they had to. The Ravens played brilliantly in that game. The Ravens nearly went and won that game. They nearly tied it up right at the death, despite turning the ball over 3 times and the Bills not turning it over once. So they had to be perfect, and they were just perfect. And I think they're going to take that, and they're going to build on it, and they're going to go to Kansas City on Sunday, and they're going to finally get over their hoodoo, and it's going to be Super Bowl number 5 for Buffalo, but will it be victory number 1? I believe. I am a full-blown Bills believer.
The problem is it will not be at Orchard Park in upstate New York with the Bills Mafia. It will be at Arrowhead Stadium, and Kansas City is almost, if the Chiefs are inevitable, Kansas City is almost invincible at Arrowhead Stadium. It feels like they play the Super Bowl there. What scares me about the Chiefs right now is Travis Kelce has it back. It took him all season, but Travis Kelce, he's motivated again. He wants that 3-peat. I wonder, does he want the 3-peat, and then he wants to retire and just go out on the peak and marry Taylor Swift? Maybe that happens. Maybe he doesn't in New Orleans at the Superdome will. But the Chiefs, this is what scares me about the Chiefs. They still have not been great this entire year. They've really only lost 1 game. You do not count the Denver game. The Denver game doesn't exist. That was 38-0. They didn't play anybody. They played 4 stringers. They've lost 1 game, and they still haven't even played that well. Patrick Mahomes won, and he had 177 passing yards. I feel like they're starting to find it, and if they get, Xavier Worthy actually had some plays against the Texans. If they get DeAndre Hopkins going, if you get the running game going, the line is a mess right now, but they still have enough. And who am I taking? Andy Reid or Sean McDermott? I'm taking Andy Reid. I want the Bills to win for 95, 99% of the NFL fans in the world. I cannot bet against the Kansas City Chiefs right now.
I'll tell you the one matchup, and the reason that I do back you, and I've just said I'm all in on the Bills, but the one matchup I am very excited to see, because all of this season with Kansas City, when they started the year and we were saying that they've got to find a way to win, and they always find a way to win, the defense was brilliant early doors, and then it started to slide off a little. And that's the antithesis of what we expect from the brilliant Steve Spagnuolo and all his crazy blitzes and his wild scheme, is that every year the defense is meant to grow into his scheme. I thought the second half against the Houston Texans, the adjustments that he made and what he threw at that defense and what he at that offensive line and at CJ Stroud, that's what eventually won the game for them. I'm really excited to see a Bills offense, which, as brilliant as it has been, is still undermanned talent-wise at receiver. I'm really excited to see what he throws at them, what crazy wrinkles, what wild stuff he does. Him and Joe Brady against each other as a coaching matchup. Super exciting to me, but Josh Allen just will overcome. I believe it. I believe in the Bills.
I hope you're right. I'm afraid you're going to be wrong, and I think it's going to be Kansas City in the Super Bowl at the Superdome, and we'll spend 2 more weeks talking about how everybody in the world hates the Chiefs. The Chiefs are inevitable, Will. They're going to be in the Super Bowl.
Well, whoever's in the Super Bowl from the AFC perspective, we will discuss a little bit later in the show who they're going to face from the NFC. We'll talk Jayden Daniels. Is it the best rookie quarterback season of all time? But of course, Jayden Daniels taken number 2 overall in this year's draft. The quarterback taken number 1 overall will have a new head coach next season. Caleb Williams will be being coached by Ben Johnson, the sensational offensive coordinator whose rise with the Detroit Lions over the last couple of years has been a sight to behold. And I'm delighted to say that joining us now from CHGO and all sorts of other brilliant coverage across Chicago, Adam Hoge is with us. Adam, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, Will. A lot of excitement in the last 24 hours here about this hire. The Bears going out and getting seemed like the biggest fish in this coaching carousel, Ben Johnson.
I watched a little bit of your emergency pod last night in bed at about 11 at night. That's the kind of human being I am, Adam. You have to say, the excitement, you said a lot, it felt like half of the building piled into the studio to watch what you guys had to say because people were so hyped. And look, for years, there's been this weird cycle with the Bears of draft a quarterback, only give them a year with a head coach, get a new head coach. They don't like the quarterback. It's never quite married up. Do you feel like finally we've got the marriage that you desperately want?
Well, I mean, I think so. I think you look at it and I understand you guys were just talking about Jayden Daniels and what he's doing is unbelievable. But I mean, if you do go back to last spring, it was pretty close to unanimous that Caleb Williams was the top prospect. And so now you're going through this coaching cycle, and at least from an offensive standpoint, I mean, you could argue, compare Ben Johnson to Mike Vrabel, who was technically the bigger coach to get, but from an offensive standpoint, there was no question that was Ben Johnson. He's been the best play caller in the NFL over the last 3 years. Statistically, his team's number 1 in EPA per play over that time period. So if you just look at it from that perspective, you're getting the number 1 quarterback prospect. Now you're getting the number 1 coaching prospect. Obviously, no one ever knows how it's going to actually play out. But in terms of process, it's hard to argue with what the Bears did here. And it's really, talking about the Bears cycle that they keep ending up in. This is unlike the Bears. It's unlike them to go out and so aggressively get this guy before he even does an in-person interview. His first time at the Bears facility will be today when he gets there, if he's not already there this morning. So that's different. Spending what sounds like it's about $15 million is different per year for a head coach. And so I think that's what's part of this excitement too, is just the Bears operated differently in this circumstance. It's the first time, guys, I can remember I didn't have to go to Wikipedia to look up a coaching prospect. There's guys but you still need to look up their resume. We know Ben Johnson at this point. Pretty much everyone does with what he's done with the Lions.
I mean, so you watched Caleb Williams all last year. You mentioned the talent. You mentioned that, in the draft, and I agree with you, it was consistent. I mean, nobody was sitting out there like Jayden Daniels is going to go number 1, or there wasn't even a debate. It was the Caleb Williams draft. And Caleb Williams, if you looked at the numbers, if you didn't know he played for the Chicago Bears, he was good last year. He was overall he was good, but he has to be better. Part of it's on him, but they hired Ben Johnson, for me, for one reason, to get the best out of Caleb Williams. What did you see with Ben with the Lions that's going to make it work so well theoretically with Caleb Williams? How does he get USC Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams with the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's another interesting part of this hire is that he's coming from within the division. So this is obviously a team and an offense that we're very familiar with, seeing the Lions twice a year. And from the other side, Ben Johnson, if there's going to be questions about how he can oversee a whole team and overlook a defense, even though he's the offensive, play caller at the same time, but he knows this defensive roster intimately from game planning against the Bears. And it's been interesting to watch those chess matches a little bit, because the Bears have actually given Ben Johnson some trouble in those games. The Bears have played the Lions closer than a lot of these other teams have, despite losing, I think, all of those games. They've been some good matchups. So I think from what I've looked from the Lions, just the fact that he uses pre-snap motion the way he does to put a quarterback in an advantageous position to understand what they're looking at, helping the quarterback diagnose the play, right? Now, on the other end of that, Caleb Williams, if there's an area where he needs to improve, he's going to have to be able to get a lot better at understanding what he's looking at and making the right decisions, because that's where I think Jared Goff, with his experience, is undoubtedly, better at this point in his career. So if Ben Johnson's trying to create the picture for him at the line of scrimmage and putting, 3 guys in motion to the point that Jared Goff's able to see, oh, I know exactly what I'm looking at, and he can check to the right thing, that's where Caleb still needs to get better, because look, he put up numbers. He looks awesome. The physical tools are all there, but he didn't always diagnose things the best at the line of scrimmage. He also didn't have a lot of help around him. His offensive line's not very good. So they got to upgrade a lot of things around him too. But he definitely has weapons to work with, and the raw talent with Caleb is definitely there. So I'm excited to see what Ben Johnson can do with a quarterback who's got all of Jared Goff's arm strength, if not more, but can also move around. There's so many more things that he can do with them.
My favorite joke from the last 2 days has been that Ben Johnson watched Jayden Daniels pull apart his Lions team and is basically going to go to the Bears to make Caleb Williams better than Jayden Daniels out of spite. Because let's not forget, that's a job he turned down 12 months ago. He could have been Jayden Daniels' head coach. The other element to it, because we're going to sit here and analyse it, and as a Bears fan who's gone through a tough time for a lot of that last decade I talked about, yes, you want to look at actually, what are the results going to be? But at the end of the day, this is the guy who had the stumble play against you guys, right? This is a guy who has a bag of tricks as wild as anyone in the NFL. You've got to be excited about it just being fun again this year.
Oh, without a doubt. He even had as many good play calls as he's had against the Bears. He had one that I actually thought was terrible when he had Penei Sewell try to throw the ball. I think that was on the Thanksgiving matchup, and it was just like almost arrogant because they were just pounding the ball down the field on the Bears defense at that point. They couldn't stop anything, and here he's got his tackle throwing the ball, and he's fortunate that it didn't turn into a turnover. And obviously we saw the other night too, he got a little bit greedy maybe with Jameson Williams, and that one backfired. So they're not all going to be perfect, but man, it's going to be refreshing to have some creativity again. And to have aggressiveness again as well, because the Bears haven't always been aggressive, and I don't know if they've been up to speed analytically over the recent years. So all of that is exciting for the Bears. However, I think we all understand he doesn't have the same offensive line. There's going to be some growing pains for both Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. So just because he's been able to run all these awesome plays with the Lions doesn't mean he's going to be able to do it right away, unless, and that's going to be the next thing we start talking about here in Chicago pretty much immediately, is upgrading the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, but especially on that offensive line.
So to upgrade the line of scrimmage, which 100%, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, that's not so much Ben Johnson. That's a job of a general manager, right? Which brings us to the elephant in the room, because the Bears, they've obviously been the best run organization in the NFL for years now. Everybody knows that. Ryan Poles, I mean, I'm not the world's biggest Bears fan, but if I go on social media, if I'm reading blogs, if I'm keeping up on stuff, I don't see anybody that likes him.
The conversation was about this job was that Ben Johnson wasn't necessarily going to take this job because he didn't like the power dynamic with Kevin Warren, with Ryan Poles.
That's what I get at. And you have Kevin Warren, you have the stadium issues. How does this, and he just got the job, but you're in Chicago. This is a real media market. I'm sure everyone's talking about this. How do you think it works out with Ryan and the GM? Because I've covered enough NFL teams, and you can have the quarterback and the head coach and all these things, but if you don't have the front office power dynamic right, none of it works.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. And the next big thing I think we'll learn in the next 24 hours is whether or not Ryan Poles, the general manager, is getting a contract extension, because it's our understanding that right now he only has 1 year left on that original deal he signed with the Bears. So if he gets that contract extension, I think that's a pretty good sign that he and Ben Johnson sold each other on their partnership and they feel good about things going forward. And if not, if they're treating this more like a 1 year experiment, where that puts Ben Johnson, I think, in a little bit more of a powerful position, because he's obviously not going to go anywhere after 1 year. So that'll be the next big clue I think we get. But I had always heard guys during this coaching search that from Ben Johnson's perspective, he did not view Ryan Poles as a roadblock. Was he possibly intrigued by the idea of being able to go to Las Vegas and hire his own general manager and work with Tom Brady? Absolutely. I think that's why the Raiders made a big push. But at the end of the day, I think it was maybe Kevin Warren, the team president, that there was more questions about who's exactly in charge. We'll learn a little bit more maybe in the next few days about some of those conversations. At this point, we haven't even talked to Ben Johnson. He hasn't been formally introduced. But I don't think he takes this job unless the Bears were able in the interview process or back channel conversations to answer all those questions that he might have had. Remember, this came down to a 3-hour Zoom interview and then back channel conversations and negotiations. I mean, that was it. There was no in-person interview. This guy had a 3-hour Zoom call. Obviously, I think this has been going on for a while, though, behind the scenes, probably from the moment the Bears lost that game in Detroit on Thanksgiving when the clock literally ran out on Matt Eberflus. I think Ben Johnson was their number one target.
And look, when you look at what it means for the division, for the NFC North, the best division in football right now, we expect, whatever the quarterback situation looks like, we do think the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell will bounce back from their disappointment. The Lions, we'll get to in a moment, but, the Packers, we think there is still enough talent there. We like the coaching, right? So he's coming into a tough situation, but a tough situation he knows. How much is the appeal of this, the fact that not only are you getting this brilliant offensive mind, but there is, as you mentioned, the brain drain within division as well, and that it's kind of resetting that playing field, which right now is already a pretty wild one?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he just knows the personnel within the division, and all these opponents so well and has had success beating all of these teams too. If I were to ask you guys who was the fourth best coach in the division behind the three head coaches on the Packers, Vikings, and Lions, who's the next best coach in the division, you would have said Ben Johnson. The offensive coordinator for the Lions.
I might have taken Ben Johnson above Matt LaFleur, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that argument already, possibly. But the point is that fourth person definitely wasn't on the Bears, and so they probably went out and got that next best guy that's already in the division and made them the head coach. So that, Will, you can have that debate about is he already better than Matt LaFleur? And so I think that's another reason why it's so exciting. The fact that they can jump right in. There's no learning curve. I don't think it's the biggest hurdle, but when you hire a coach from the other conference, especially when you only see these teams every 4 years, it does make a difference. You got to put more work into learning your opponents, especially when you're an offensive head coach who's calling the plays and not just one of those CEO types. So I think that's a major advantage and one of the real big bonus factors that the Bears get in this hire.
Brilliant stuff. Any final thoughts? Anything else you want to
Really quick. What is it? I've been to Chicago a billion times. I love city Chicago. Bears fans, I feel for them. What is it like to be a Bears fan right now? You get Caleb Williams, and you get the coach that nobody thought you were going to get in January in Chicago. I feel like this is like an episode of The Bear where everyone's happy and singing along, and they're not fighting in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's cold right now. That's what it feels like. It's -6 Fahrenheit, which I think converts to like a minus billion in Celsius for you guys. It's exciting though. Because getting back to kind of how we started this conversation, this just isn't how the Bears usually operate. They don't usually go get the big fish. They get the guy you sort of have to talk yourself into, and you give him less money. And so the fact that you kind of got this no-brainer hire that turned down jobs. I mean, another way to look at it is he chose the Bears, right?
Over Tom Brady. He chose the Bears over Tom Brady.
Yes. Look, the Bears couldn't beat Tom Brady at all. The only win they had against Tom Brady his entire career was when Tom Brady, if you guys remember, forgot how many downs there were. He forgot his fourth down in that Bucs game at Soldier Field. So his record against the Bears now falls to 6-2 all time. So this is easily the biggest victory the Bears ever got against Tom Brady.
Brilliant stuff, Adam. Superb. We'll see you on Radio Row in New Orleans, right?
I'll see you in a couple weeks. Always
Beautiful
great talking
stuff.
to you guys.
Can't wait to see you, man. And we'll learn a lot more about that situation
Good stuff.
in Chicago when we're out there. So I'm sure we'll catch up with Hoge when we arrive in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59. talkSPORT End Zone are going to be there. We are going to have so much great content. We'll be doing this show from there. We'll be doing the rundown. We'll do a big Super Bowl preview. We're going to have interviews galore. It's going to be unreal. Let's talk NFC.
Let's do it.
This matchup, the NFC East, all division clash. The Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders. The Eagles, 3 straight years in deep playoff runs. Nick Sirianni has an unbelievable record as head coach, whether the city love him or not, right? They're hosting another NFC Championship game. On the other side of things, the resurgent Washington Commanders, 4-13 last year. True worst to first stuff for them to go out, get the quarterback, get a head coach who, let's remember, was the last head coach hired in last year's cycle, who was an unpopular choice, who they desperately wanted, Ben Johnson, and didn't get it.
Who the Dallas Cowboys let go. That's what I love. The Dallas Cowboys could have promoted Dan Quinn and had the right head coach. They let him go to a division rival, and now he's 1 win away from the Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback. That is the best story in the NFL right now, Will.
So, everything that feeds into this game is unreal. They split the regular season as well. That second game in overtime was chef's kiss stuff. But really, what comes down to more than anything else is going to be that Eagles defense, imperious last weekend against the Rams for 3 quarters, going up against Jayden Daniels, who at this point, I think might be having the best rookie quarterback season of all time. Like, of all time. That is a huge statement to make. And I think if he wins on Sunday, I think he takes that moniker.
So if he wins on Sunday, if he's in the Super Bowl, I will change my vote. Right now, I have a few people ahead of him. Everyone has forgotten. And even when I say this, I'm like, wait, did this really happen? Like, did this really happen? And not that recent NFL history, not that long NFL history, Dak Prescott had a rookie season that you look at the numbers and what he did is absolutely unbelievable. Dak Prescott with Ezekiel Elliott, they're both rookies. That's the best the Cowboys have ever been in the last 30 years. They ended up fading in the playoffs and had some bad luck. I will take Dak Prescott. There's actually a Washington quarterback who was everyone's forgotten, who was really good not that long ago as a rookie, RG3, Robert Griffin III. Couple other guys, Russell Wilson had an incredible rookie season.
Really great.
Cam Newton actually had, stats-wise, Cam Newton, 4,000 plus yards, 700 running yards, absolutely incredible. But that was mostly regular season, Will. And I do agree with you that if Jayden Daniels, I don't care what he does, he could throw up 150 yards. He could pull a Patrick Mahomes and throw for 177. If they win that game on the road, so you're going to say you're going to beat Detroit, number 1 seed at Ford Field on the road, and smoke the Lions. You're going to beat the Eagles in Philly and make the Super Bowl as a rookie quarterback? Are you kidding me? Like, he will be, hands down, best rookie season by a quarterback of all time. But he's got to win that game. And there's, you mentioned everything, and everything you said is 100%. There's a name you didn't mention that I think is the key to this game. And he knows Patrick Mahomes pretty well. He could be playing Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury, who could have gone to the Raiders, by the way, who had that job. And no one wants to go to the Raiders. Do you notice that?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Cliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator, has the Caleb Williams ties USC, was at Texas Tech and developed Patrick Mahomes. Head coach with Kyler Murray, Arizona Cardinals, takes time off, doesn't need to coach, comes back, and basically last minute takes that Washington job. What he has been able to do with Jayden Daniels in terms of minimizing everything. He hasn't said, like, I'm going to give you this playbook that's this big. He's going to put everything basically on a note card and slow it down. And then Jayden Daniels can process so quickly, and he's taken everything from LSU and the Heisman. I was doing a story on Jayden Daniels for talkSPORT. Jayden Daniels, at the age of 13 years old, this was 11 years ago, tweeted that one day everyone's going to know who I am. Now, a lot of 13-year-olds might tweet that. Nobody becomes Jayden Daniels except Jayden Daniels. He has it. But Cliff Kingsbury has been able to find a way to get the best out of him but not overload it. They don't have great wide receivers. It's not like they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They don't have great running backs. They don't have Saquon Barkley. His numbers are insane, but I want to see what Cliff Kingsbury is able to design up for him to find a way around that Philly pass rush, because they're going to come after him, but with screens, with short passes, with trying to stretch the field, that whole combination. I think Cliff Kingsbury is the key for this game for Washington to win in Philly.
See, it's fascinating because I don't disagree with you, and I have been one of the big Cliff Kingsbury doubters because you named all those people that he developed in college. He also had losing seasons with Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes.
He's not a head coach. Yes.
Like he wasn't actually, like, he in theory was a great play designer, but not a great play caller. And so there's a lot of, I still have my doubts about Cliff Kingsbury, but I think he has had his best year this year by a country mile. But to come back to the kind of Jayden Daniels conversation about where he stands all time, and I'm going to mention 2 other names because I think if we don't, people will kind of come for us with pitchforks. it was before my time, but Dan Marino's rookie season stands up for an all-timer.
Dan Marino, that's a bit of a misnomer, though, because I was pulling these stats yesterday doing research.
Love it.
Dan Marino had incredible numbers, but he made the Super Bowl in his second year. Dan Marino, as a rookie, he wasn't a week 1 starter. Dan Marino, I think, went 9-2 as a rookie. Very, very good, but it's not like he was week 1 to the Super Bowl, which Jayden Daniels is doing.
And Andrew Luck's the other guy from recent
years.
Andrew Luck
had an incredible rookie year.
You mentioned RG3, and look, RG3, what he did in Washington, sensational, and a horrible ending to that season, the injury, the lost playoff game, everything else. The reason that I am holding Jayden Daniels in such high esteem is because it doesn't actually make sense to me that he's this good. He is slender. He is, in his early part of the colleges, he didn't look that great in the pocket. His arm didn't look as lithe as it does now. And he's done this amazing thing. You talked about what Cliff Kingsbury did with the processing. He does this thing where he watches game film back on a VR headset and he watches it sped up to 1.75 times so that he's having to read the defense, moving 75% faster than they normally would.
So he's basically Neo in the Matrix,
exactly.
right? Like the whole world, bullets are coming at him, and he's like doing the slow-mo thing.
And there is an incredible play that he makes in that game with the Lions where they bring the blitz pressure off the right edge, and he makes a downfield throw. I think it's Terry McLaurin on the outside, down at about the 5-yard line, and he sees the running back is going to go and pick up the blitz, and he spots the blitzer, and you can see, like, the way he's looking, you can watch him picking these things up. The way he rolled out of the pocket, sensed the pressure, felt exactly where it was going to come from, knew the point he could get to, made the exact perfect throw into the bread bin. I'm watching that and I'm saying, I don't care who's coaching this person up. This guy's got the pocket presence and the awareness and the ability to read a game like a 10-year veteran. Like, those are the things you don't see guys doing in their rookie season.
So compare Jayden Daniels versus Jared Goff, who has been in the Super Bowl before, so polished, so experienced, so efficient. And Jared Goff versus the Commanders is turning the ball over, throwing picks. Jayden Daniels looked like Tom Brady out there running Belichick's system. For me, Jayden Daniels Jayden Daniels to me is a reminder that we're all getting old, that we're not in charge, that the world's changing, that if you think you're hip and cool, you're not, because there's a 10-year-old who's already got it figured out and is way ahead of you. And I'm very serious about that. Think about this. So he went to Arizona State, right? Didn't really make it there, had to transfer, goes to LSU, Heisman Trophy winner. But Caleb, we're going to talk about the Bears and Caleb Williams. Well, Caleb Williams is a guy. Jayden Daniels, okay, that's cool, but we're all focused on Caleb Williams. No, and then he gets Cliff Kingsbury, he gets the Washington Commanders, organization that was a disaster, new owner, Josh Harris, new coach, Dan Quinn, but it all came down to Jayden Daniels because he's so smooth. He can process. He's got the swagger. I was going through all of his old tweets as I was doing research on him. There's a quarterback that I want to mention. I know this is kind of murky territory. Jayden Daniels was a huge, huge Deshaun Watson fan. I'm not talking about Cleveland Browns Deshaun Watson. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson when he was going to be the new face of the NFL with the Houston Texans during the good old days when Deshaun Watson, as a rookie, put up insane numbers before he had his injury, when it was Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, and who was better? Jayden Daniels, and I mean this is the highest compliment because Deshaun Watson now is not the same thing. But Jayden Daniels reminds me of Deshaun Watson when Deshaun Watson was incredible. Not so much the dual threat, but he was silky, smooth. He had the swagger. He had the precision. You're like, oh my gosh, like this guy's ready to do it now. That's Jayden Daniels, but we all overlooked him. You know, he was putting up these insane numbers, and I'm the same way. How is he doing this? Is he really this good? Oh, yeah, he just smoked the Lions at Ford Field. He is this good.
Remember how last week we sat here and we watched my terrible preseason predictions?
I don't remember that at all.
Go and watch the video. It's available at talkSPORT Endzone. I picked the Jags to be in the AFC Championship game. That's how badly this went for me. So, you know, I also sat there on draft night on talkSPORT 2, and as much as I love the Caleb Williams picks,
sure,
it was the right pick.
You had to make the pick, yes.
I was a huge Drake May fan coming to this draft, and actually personally had Drake May above Jayden Daniels on my kind of big board. Not that I'm an expert, but from my perspective, if I was drafting, he was the guy I was looking at. You are teeing me up for getting excited about storylines. If it is Chiefs-Eagles in the Super Bowl, the chance for Jalen Hurts off one of his worst seasons to bounce back. He was the Super Bowl MVP.
Well, he'll have 2 weeks to rest.
ago.
He needs to rest right now. He needs some time off.
He would have won the Super Bowl MVP if there hadn't been a terrible pass interference call, which gave the Chiefs a winning field goal.
Don't get me started on that.
Well, let's get to the refs. Let's do exactly that. Let's go with extra point. And let's start off with, we didn't talk about them earlier.
Let's do it.
Let's talk officiating. Let's talk... I actually thought the worst call of the weekend came in the Bills-Ravens game on that awful defensive pass interference / offensive pass interference. And I am at a point right now where I think any penalty which is going to give you 15 yards or more should be reviewable no matter what. That game with the Chiefs and the Texans, I can't remember the last time I've seen Twitter that fired up. And that's saying something, considering it's just pure vitriol there, right?
So I agree with you, except I disagree. Well, number one, I never like to agree with Chris Sims from Pro Football.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Not the world's biggest Chris Sims fan. I agree with Chris Sims here. He had a bit. He went off, and I'm sorry, the Houston Texans are wrong here. Now, I get it because we spent the whole start of this show talking about the Chiefs hate, and most of that is coming from Chiefs hate. But I'm not saying those calls were 100% right, okay? But there's a few things going on here. Number one, the
I'll tell you what. Should we see
Let's do it.
Let's see the big hit on Patrick Mahomes.
I got something to say on this one.
They had the flag, and let's see what D'Amico Ryans had to say about it as well.
We knew going into this game, man, it was us versus everybody, right? When I say everybody, it's everybody, all of whatever. Everybody, the naysayers, the doubt, right? Everybody.
Look, there's a few things going on there, and I'm definitely not hating on the Houston Texans because I covered them for more than a decade, and I get it, and I feel for the fans. The Houston Texans had to be better in that game, and the Kansas City Chiefs found a way to win, but that wasn't the refs' fault. But in the end, Troy Aikman is right, and I applaud Troy Aikman for calling that out live on national television because few people would ever do that anymore in that position with that job. The NFL does have to fix this, and we've seen too many instances where quarterbacks are running and sliding. Patrick Mahomes had that horrible fake flop near the sideline.
Awful.
That all bothers me, but to blame the refs who said the refs have it in for you, no. It is the Chiefs, it is Mahomes, they're going to protect quarterbacks, and you're on the road. The Houston Texans should have been better. It wasn't the refs' fault they lost that game.
Chuck Noll used to tell the Pittsburgh Steelers players, you've got to play better than the ref's ref. And he's absolutely right about that. And generally, that is my opinion on all of officiating. I get angry at officiating and I get frustrated. It's always about reviewable things because I don't blame them for throwing that flag. If you're in the moment there, you hear the sound of helmets clashing. It turns out later that it's the two Texans players' helmets hitting each other. But you hear that sound, you see that hit, you watch it in real time. I completely understand why you throw a flag there. It's more about the process. It's more about the league not allowing there to be sky judge. It's more about that's the stuff that needs to change, right? And that's why people get so angry about it, because when it happens in the playoffs, we see it in week 5, we get annoyed about it, but we move on. In the playoffs, it's frustrating. I want to talk about the coverage from my extra point of the AFC game between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. And actually, I kind of thought I was going to be angrier coming into today because what I was expecting was we'd come off the back of that game and we'd have the exact same nonsense we always have. Whoever lost that game was going to be the playoff choke artist, was going to be the guy who couldn't do it in January, the guy who could never do it in the big game. And actually what I've seen is a really interesting flip over the past couple of days of people actually going, can we take a beat, please? Can we just take a moment and say, Lamar Jackson hasn't won the big game yet. But at this stage of his career, the big knock on Peyton Manning, who I think changed the game of football and deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, at this point in his career, he hadn't won the big one. He hadn't gone to a Super Bowl. He hadn't got it over the line. We live in an era of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes dominating championships.
And instant gratification.
And of instant gratification. But, how many players, how many great all-timers didn't win a championship at all or only took away one when they were expected to win many because previously it was Joe Montana and the 49ers or it was, the man you heard, Troy Aikman and the Cowboys, or it was because you get these dynasties who just dominate over a course of 5 or 6 years. If Lamar Jackson wins one Super Bowl in his career, then it will have been a successful career because he's been a brilliant quarterback. He's dragged that team to the playoffs so many
He's
times.
already one of the most historic quarterbacks of all time. Longevity stats aren't there. Nobody has ever done what he has done as a dual threat at that high of a level. Well, the only thing that's missing is a Super Bowl. Give him a little time. He's still a young, he's basically a young kid. I mean, let's be real.
And I really believe he gets there, and I really believe he does win one. But beyond that, when I really go back and I assess this season, last season, the performances of Patrick Mahomes, the performances, our conversations about MVP and everything else, I think Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in the NFL.
He is the best quarterback in the NFL.
All up and down, everything said. If you were to draft the entire list of quarterbacks over again today, if every franchise was just wiped clean, I think you'd be mad to not go 1-1 Lamar Jackson.
I would Patrick Mahomes, then Lamar Jackson. No, because Lamar Jackson is the best talent in the NFL, and you can say best quarterback. Lamar Jackson is not efficient enough at times, especially in the playoffs, and Patrick Mahomes has that something, that Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, that thing that we can't describe, and you have it in you, maybe because he was a baseball player's son, I don't know what it is. I will take Patrick Mahomes. If I have to have a play or a drive, I'm going Patrick Mahomes and then Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's got to be better in the playoffs. I'm sorry.
And by the way, I'm just going to very finally tie this into our earlier conversation about the best rookie quarterback season of all time. If I'm redrafting the whole NFL from the top, I'm the top four, like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, whatever order you want to put them, and then taking Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. The fifth best quarterback in the NFL right now might just be Jayden Daniels.
He's doing it.
It might just be Jayden Daniels, and that is amazing. And look, they're going to be the Commanders-Eagles game and that Chiefs-Bills game are both live on talkSPORT 2 this weekend. We'll have brilliant reaction here on talkSPORT End Zone as well. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment on these videos as well. We love to react to them. We'll have some exclusive interviews coming up for you from the 4 teams involved in this weekend. And then we are less than 2 weeks away from flying out to New Orleans from our biggest ever Super Bowl of coverage on talkSPORT. There are going to be dozens of videos across our channels every day, exclusive interviews, insight, players, coaches, the whole kit and caboodle, all the way up to our coverage of Super Bowl 59. So it's just going to ramp up. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So get involved now. Get in on the ground floor. You're going to love Super Bowl week with us here at talkSPORT End Zone. Thank you so much for watching.